So let's cut through the BS. The world is seeing a resurgence of anti-Semitism unlike any since World War II. And it's being fed by elements of the media, politicians, and academics. In fact, it is reminiscent of world attitudes during World War II, when rumors began to leak out about the extermination of Jews in Europe. Escaped prisoners and local citizens related stories of systematic extermination of Jews, among other horrifying things happening years before the camps were liberated. But countries around the world, they refused to believe it. They was often saying the stories are exaggerations, if indeed these camps existed at all. They dismissed the rumors as sympathy plays being made by Jews who probably brought the abuse upon themselves in the first place. As the Jews tried to flee, nations closed their borders to them. Canada's Mackenzie King famously said multiple times, none is too many, when he was talking about Jews coming in here. He promised Canadians he wouldn't let Jews come in and pollute our bloodlines. Yeah, that's how it was then. Ships of Jewish refugees were turned back to Europe, where many of them ended up being murdered in the Holocaust. Even when it became undeniable that Jews were being exterminated, countries went out of their way to avoid helping. King relented by allowing Jewish children to find refuge here in Canada, but made it clear they'd be sent back to Europe as soon as possible. Again, we don't want to pollute those bloodlines. Again, reports of atrocities being committed against Jews in Europe were underplayed or denied. Even today, we have losers who deny the Holocaust even happened, despite overwhelming evidence, literally millions of witnesses. Some people just insist on holding some perverse hatred for Jews to the point where they'll never admit any wrongdoing was done against them. Now, despite rather overwhelming evidence that Hamas terrorists slaughtered countless unarmed Jewish citizens on October 7th, Canadian Palestinian activists have been claiming it was Israel who murdered the people attending a music festival that day. Yeah, Gada Sasa, a group of Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East, made that claim on Ryan Jesperson's show in Alberta last week. And Jesperson did call her out on that claim. He's been abused by Hamas supporters online for treating Sasa poorly in the interview. She later, by the way, organized a protest outside of a Jewish child care center in Ontario, where children and parents alike were intimidated. If the issue's just with Israel and not Jews themselves, then what's the point of protesting outside of daycare centers? Why not go outside an embassy or a consulate? Because your problem is with Jews, not Israel. Quit feeding me that BS, saying it's Israel you got the beef with. Not when you're targeting daycare centers, you losers. Likewise, pro-Hamas protesters, and they have been pro-Hamas, they've been intimidating customers and workers alike at Jewish-owned businesses and restaurants. Does that sound familiar for those of you who are familiar with history? We got pro-Palestine mobs demonstrating outside of these things. I mean, anti-Jewish mobs demonstrating outside of businesses and daycares. This is the sort of behavior that led up to Kristallnacht in Germany in 1938. When a pogrom was carried out against Jews businesses, it started with them. They were targeted. There was graffiti, smashed glass. Kristallnacht translates to Night of Broken Glass. And that event was considered the beginning of the formal pursuit of what was called the final solution for the extermination of Jews. So why does Israel face such scrutiny when it comes to every assault against them? When it was revealed that Hamas terrorists have been beheading babies, that was denied. And finally, the Hamas apology said, well, okay, there were a few dozen babies murdered, but not all of them were beheaded, as if that somehow makes it better. Next, the claim emerged that Israel deliberately bombed a hospital in Gaza and killed hundreds of people. The terrorists of Hamas were given the benefit of the doubt, and Israel was widely condemned for committing the atrocity. Trudeau implied Israel was at fault with his initial statement. It hasn't really walked it back now that it's been proven the hospital was hit by a rocket misfire from terrorists in Gaza themselves. Why on earth does the world keep believing the claims of terrorists who just literally slaughtered peaceful kids in a music festival and have decapitated babies? Well, they condemn them before the facts come out. Why the zeal to condemn Israel, no matter how bad the source of information is? When people were gleefully dancing in the Canadian streets in the days after the attack on Israel, they weren't being pro-Palestine. They were being pro-Hamas, and they were celebrating mass murder. It can only be when the atrocity against Jews, is proven and shown that it finally becomes muted, the critique. The chant from river to sea. It's common among pro-Hamas protesters rearing their ugly heads in Canada. That statement references wiping Israel from the map and slaughtering every Jew within it. It's right in the Hamas charter, guys. Yeah, we still tolerate this for some reason. I mean, we wouldn't tolerate it with any other group out there, I tell you that. The Israeli government had to bring in over 100 international journalists the other day and show them footage of 40 minutes from the Hamas slaughter. The terrorists are so perverse, they recorded every minute of it and what they did. Hopefully this did serve as an effective reality check for some of the media members who still lived under the misconception that Hamas is some enemy that can be reasoned with or shown mercy. People say Israel has the right to defend itself, yet condemn Israel every time they actually do it. So what are they supposed to do? You're supposed to sit still and wait for the next round of terrorists, the next pile of missiles. Hamas is still firing missiles into the residential areas of Israel daily. And Israel are the ones catching the crap. Where's the demands that Hamas cease firing? Israel's going to be under threat as long as Hamas exists, and they plan to eliminate that threat. If somebody else has suggestions on how to do that, I'm all ears. But for now, Hamas has a mandate to eliminate every Jew in Israel. So don't try to tell me they're open to reasonable negotiations. They're holding hostages and they're lobbing bombs into residential areas. No other nation would be subjected to such public abuse for defending itself after such an attack. No other nation except Israel. And let's not pretend the reason for that is because it's the only Jewish country on earth.